Coming up on Genealogy Roadshow. This man hopes to find the missing pieces of his family's puzzle.
All of that stuff was destroyed in Katrina.
Was a dying man's memory of a long-lost sister real or imagined?
Oh, no.
And could the voodoo legacy of Marie Laveau have been carried down to this man?
Now I know.
Yeah, now
That's
you
good.
know.
Now I know.
These stories and more on Genealogy Roadshow. We're crisscrossing the country, helping everyday Americans unlock family secrets and discover the truths of their past.
Wow.
Helping uncover these fascinating stories is our expert team of genealogists.
My name's Kenyatta Berry.
My name is Joshua Taylor.
My name is Mary Tedesco.
Join us as we take everyday people on an emotional journey of self-discovery.
That's incredible.
Today, we're in the Big Easy, New Orleans, Louisiana. Known for its jubilant jazz, oversized celebrations, and proud cultural identity, New Orleans is one of the oldest and most unique cities in America. Founded in 1718, this port city is where French, Spanish, Caribbean, and African cultures collided. This eclectic mix gave birth to new local languages, Creole and Cajun, and offered a wide array of religions, from Christianity to voodoo. It's here where African drums combined with European horns, creating a distinct and vibrant sound. It's no wonder New Orleans is known as the birthplace of jazz. We've come to New Orleans' historic Board of Trade, established in 1880. Once the busy center of trade and commerce, today it's the home for Genealogy Roadshow and for hundreds who have come to explore their family histories.
I'm trying to find more information on my great-grandfather that had a pet alligator that lived in the French Quarter.
My father started our family tree, and I kind of want to just pick up where he left off. So here to see if I can find more information.
Hurricane Katrina changed the life of every New Orleans citizen forever. For our first story, this man is hoping to recover a cherished piece of family history that was lost in the midst of Katrina's disastrous aftermath.
My name is Andrew Centillis. I'm 35 years old, and I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. So many people lost family members and friends in Katrina, and I do feel lucky that what we lost were material things. It's a relief to know that your family is safe and everybody's all right. When Katrina hit, there were a lot of family documents and pictures lost that had been passed down from generations, and a lot of times that was the only record or photo you might have had of someone, and it's gone. You can't get it back. Losing that information sparked an interest in me to find out more. I'm hoping that the Genealogy Roadshow will fill in some of the gaps from a lot of the stuff that we lost, and I think it's a great opportunity to be able to give this back to my family.
Andrew, welcome to Genealogy Roadshow.
Thank you.
You've brought some family members with you.
I did. This is my cousin Lori, and this is my Aunt Phyllis.
I have to say, New Orleans has such an amazing character. What does the city mean to you?
It's always felt sort of like a family member, an old relative. I'm very comfortable here. It's the only place I've had that feeling.
Your example with your family photos and your family records really is something that, you can't replace in that sense. But let's learn more about what you can do to replace them. When disaster strikes, like it did in New Orleans and other areas of Louisiana and Mississippi, thousands of priceless documents and family artifacts are lost. The question is, can you recreate items that are lost? Can you reconstruct a family tree that once was?
Hey, John. Great to see you.
Nice to meet you.
Come and check out the archive.
All right. Well, you absolutely can. It's not impossible. I'm here at the Old U.S. Mint, which holds thousands of historical documents.
Here we have a few family Bibles and scrapbooks
As a genealogist, I come to archives like the Louisiana State Museum looking for family Bibles. I look for newspaper collections, things that might have been donated to the library that can offer me clues to put the story behind a family. And it actually lists the births, marriages, and the deaths for the family. In fact, this one even lists what church someone was married in. So I could go after a record of the church.
Another fascinating item in the archive is scrapbooks, and we have a pretty sizable collection.
So if you're missing photographs of someone or other things in the family, this could literally reconstruct or recreate. This building holds a treasure trove for genealogists. It has documents dating from the colonial days of Louisiana up until the present day.
I have some of our colonial documents.
I'm here looking at original colonial documents from when Louisiana was part of a Spanish and French colony. And these really are unbeatable records when you try and recreate a family. Documents from 1747. You know, I'm literally touching history. King Louis XIV signed this. We really are indebted to organizations that preserve documents like this, because in the case of disasters, when original family records disappear, you can always come to a repository like this that has the full set of the originals for you to take a look at. So let's see what we were able to find going through to replace some of the items that your family lost.
Yes.
So we were able to find some information about both sides of your family. I'm actually going to start with your mother's line.
Okay.
Okay, your mother's maiden name is Hicks.
Yes.
We were able to do a lot of work to reconstruct this family tree. And we actually can go back to a William Russell Hicks, your third great-grandfather. William Russell Hicks was the first member of your Hicks family in Louisiana. Turning to an 1850 census, here we see your relative, William Russell Hicks. He is a carpenter, born in New York. And we are able to trace William Hicks back to a man named John Hicks, your sixth great-grandfather. John Hicks lived in the 1750s. He grew up in Rhode Island and then moved his whole family to Nova Scotia, Canada.
It's a big move.
It's a very big move. And what's interesting about John Hicks is he was a Quaker. When a Quaker would want to move from one place to another, they would write and get permission. So they leave these incredible records.
Oh, that's amazing.
So it's these types of records we were able to use to reconstruct your Hicks family.
Right.
Now, we can actually trace the Hicks family all the way back to the first Hicks in America, your 10th great-grandparents, Robert Hicks and Margaret Winslow. Robert Hicks came from England in 1621 to a town that some of us might know called Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Plymouth Rock.
Plymouth Rock. Most people, when they think of Plymouth, they say, oh, Mayflower, right away. Well, Robert Hicks actually came on the second boat, called the Fortune. And that was the ship you wanted to be on because the Mayflower had a bit of a disastrous voyage and not a lot of the passengers survived. The Fortune, however, had some good fortune. So those are some pretty deep American roots.
Yeah.
This is all new to me. This is a side I don't know that much about. So, I mean, this is great information.
Well, there you go, yeah.
All the way from the start.
Right. Let's look at your father's side now a little bit. Your surname, Centilles, has been in the Louisiana area for quite a while. Your immigrant ancestor was John Gregoire Centilles, your third great-grandfather, who actually was born in France in 1822 and then the 1850s and came to Louisiana. Now, one thing that we always do as genealogists is ensure that we follow the mother's line because maiden names can have fascinating stories. And so one of the names that particularly was sort of pointed out when I looked at this is the Toledano family, your paternal grandmother's side.
And that's my line.
This family is an incredibly rich family when it comes to their connection with Louisiana and New Orleans. Let's start with your third great-grandfather, Benjamin Toledano. Now, Benjamin served in the Civil War in the Jefferson Mounted Guard.
Wow.
And I have here for you a document that was written by him. This is a letter that he writes in 1862. He's asking to resign from service because of his health. Wow.
But look at this signature. It looks like Bong's.
My dad's, yeah.
It looks like your dad's signature?
Very much.
Francis Benjamin.
His name was Francis Benjamin.
Now, when we go up a generation, we find another military hero in the family. Benjamin Toledano's father, Cristobal Toledano, actually served in the War of 1812. Here we have a nice oil painting of your fourth great-grandfather.
Your face.
Looking at the oil painting of your third great-grandfather and your photograph, there are some similarities there.
I see it a little bit.
I saw it immediately. It's like...
So let's learn more about the War of 1812 and how your fourth great-grandfather was involved.
Yeah.
And it's known to many as the Second Revolution. The War of 1812 was such an important conflict because it established America's independence from Britain. In fact, it was in this war that our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., was actually set on fire by British troops. Now, the War of 1812 ends with a treaty signed on Christmas Eve, 1814. News traveled a bit slower in those days.
Right.
And news hadn't reached the city of New Orleans. And so the last battle of the War of 1812 is the Battle of New Orleans on January 8th. Many of us might recognize the future U.S. President Andrew Jackson. He led the charge with an all-volunteer battalion against the British.
Okay.
And that battalion included your fourth great-grandfather.
Wow. That's incredible.
Your fourth great-grandfather, Cristobal Toledano, actually helped to save the city of New Orleans. No wonder you have such a connection to this city.
So much.
And it really shows to me how tied you are to the city of New Orleans.
More than I thought.
And it teaches us that while we might lose records, we might lose property, we never lose our family history.
Right.
We never lose who we are and the people that are closest to you in your heart.
Right.
Yes.
That's true.
Thank you so much for coming by the Genealogy Roadshow today.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
You're welcome.
I would love to share this information with everybody in my family. This time, we will make sure that there is several copies and it's in everybody's hands, and we won't be losing it in any storm ever again.
Is it possible that all of these people are actually related? The key is one woman born nearly 200 years ago.
My name is Penelope Major McCarthy. I'm from Pointe-Coupee Parish, Louisiana. I'm here in New Orleans to stay with my family, the Gremillon families. We all share a common great-great-great-great-grandfather, and we have a wonderful story. Last year, 5 of us took a DNA test, and we got matches as cousins. We're a racially diverse family. We'd like to understand and kind of solving the mystery of how all this came about. And we'd like to know more about Henriette, the slave woman. She was the mother of this whole line of my beautiful cousins of color.
And even though we don't all look alike, we are family.
Gremillon, yay!
Thank you so much for coming and for bringing your wonderful family. Now, I have to ask you, how are you all related?
We're either brothers, sisters, grandchildren, or cousins. At the very least, we are all cousins.
Who do you all descend from?
Charles Gremillon is our common ancestor.
Okay. Now, what is really your most pressing question?
We want to know about Henriette. She's the mother of all the cousins of color. She had 2 children with Gustave Gremillon, but we don't know about her life. We want to find out what the story is, whether good or bad, but we're hoping it's a good story.
She's basically the matriarch of this family. She's the one that brought us all together.
So let's take a look at Henriette.
It could be Henriette in French.
Correct. We know that Henriette had at least 2 children that we're aware of by Gustave Gremillon, a slave owner. One Joseph, born in 1857, and the next Aristide, born in 1864. Is that right?
Great-great-great-grandfather.
So on the 1850 census, we find that Gustave Gremillon was married to somebody named Maria Malvina Guerin. So, like a large number of female slaves during this time period, it appeared that Henriette may have had 2 sets of children. One with Gustave Gremillon, and the other with her husband, Pierre Walker.
Oh.
Did you know Henriette was married?
No.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
Oh.
Let's take a look at the 1870 U.S. Census. This was the first census she would have been enumerated as a free woman.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh.
Free.
Oh, cool.
1870.
Oh, yes.
How does that make you feel?
Chills.
Yeah. I was expecting that.
Mine too.
She moved on with her life and apparently found happiness.
So this is the 1870 U.S. Census. Now, this particular census does not detail the exact family relationships. It doesn't say like mother, brother, wife, etc. So we can assume that the children listed as Black were Henriette's and her husband, Pierre Walker.
2 sets of twins?
Oh my God. So that's why I had twins.
Oh,
She
really?
has twins.
Wow.
Thank you, grandmother.
But it is interesting because according to the census, close by are the 2 boys, Joseph and Aristide. Her sons with Gustave Gramillon. And Kiva, Aristide is your 3rd great-grandfather. They really were not that far away, just within the same post office district. Now, by this time, Gustave is a widower. His wife Marie has died, and in 1897, Gustave dies. And by 1900, Henriette is living in Pointe Coupee. She's 60 years old. Her husband, Pierre Walker, is 70 years old. She's still tending to her family, and her husband is a farmer. And Joseph and Aristide, Henriette's 2 sons from Gustave Gramillon, were also farmers. So let's recap the children. From the records, we were able to find out that Henriette had 2 children with Gustave Gramillon, Joseph and Aristide.
Okay.
And with her husband, Pierre, we were able to discover that she had at least another 13 for a total of 15 children.
Oh, my word.
We have so many more cousins to
We
find.
gotta find them.
You might want to get more people in Pointe Coupee to take a DNA test.
Yes, that's so
I'm guessing.
awesome.
And then we see by this 1925 record from Pointe Coupee.
Wow.
That's her death
that
record.
Harriet
Oh, my
Walker.
Oh, my goodness.
I have been trying to track that down for years.
Mercy.
So on May 1st, 1925, your Henriette passes away at the age of almost 90. So she definitely lived more of her life as a free woman than a slave.
It's heartwarming to know that she lived as a free woman for quite a few years, and she was able to, I'm assuming, find happiness. And her kids were close by. Even though they weren't living with her, they were close by.
What a strong person.
Really. And she had
An amazing woman.
And that she survived slavery and
Yes.
lived more years as a free woman, way more years.
I want to thank each of you for coming on Genealogy Roadshow, and thank you so much for bringing the whole family, because you guys are really fantastic.
And we love each other so much.
It's action-packed here at the Board of Trade. People are here looking for clues to their family's past, like Mariana Arata and her family, who receive a surprise from centuries ago.
This is actually a page from a diary of your 3rd great-grand-uncle.
Look at that.
People have come to the roadshow to get answers, like Lauren Anderson, who learns her ancestor, Bishop Wayman, has a connection to famous abolitionist Frederick Douglass.
We see that they're in the same community as Frederick Douglass. We know that the Wayman family were interconnected because Bishop Wayman gave the eulogy at Frederick Douglass's funeral.
It sounds like there were 2 very prominent families if you gave the eulogy. The families were very close.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not many people can say they have a connection to an iconic voodoo queen. Does this man? He's here to find out.
My name is Brian Joseph Bigard Sr. I'm an 8th grade middle school social studies teacher. I have been a resident of the city of New Orleans since birth. The city of New Orleans always will be the core of my existence. I have heard that I'm possibly related to the Voodoo Queen, Marie Laveau. Marie Laveau is a New Orleans legend. People come from all over the world to visit Marie Laveau's museum. They buy objects that were believed to be used by Marie Laveau in her voodoo practice. And even though I don't understand what voodoo is about, I just want to know, am I related to Marie Laveau? Louis Armstrong was a very pivotal and a very dominant person in the city of New Orleans. Barney Bigard was a clarinetist with Louis Armstrong. He also played with Duke Ellington, and he was very successful and had many recordings. With the Bigard last name, I do believe that there's a connection there because I love music. I have always been a part of the gospel choirs of the churches that I've attended. Being related to these New Orleans legends is just like a good pot of gumbo. You have so many different mixes and spices and so many different things, and it's all bubbled inside of me.
Hi, Brian Bigard. Welcome to Genealogy Roadshow. We're so glad to have you here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate being here.
So let's start with the Voodoo Queen, Marie Laveau. She was one of the most well-known figures in Louisiana voodoo. But in order to understand Marie Laveau, first you've got to understand voodoo.
When most people hear the word voodoo, it conjures thoughts of mysterious and sinister island magic. In reality, voodoo is a legal religion born in the West African country of Benin with over 4 million believers. Today, voodoo is divided into several distinct sects, including New Orleans voodoo, which combines elements of Catholicism with traditional African practices. Introduced to the United States by African slaves in 1719, voodoo made its way into Louisiana by way of Haiti during the Haitian Revolution. Slaves brought with them their languages, cultural practices, and religious beliefs rooted in ancestor worship. During the 19th century, voodoo queens became prominent figures in New Orleans, presiding over ceremonial meetings and ritual dances. The most famous voodoo queen is Marie Laveau, renowned in New Orleans for her healing work and charms. A devout Catholic, Marie was born in 1801 as a free person of color to biracial parents, one of whom was Creole. According to folklore, Laveau was so influential that world leaders came to her for spiritual advice. To this day, followers continue to ask her for guidance and leave offerings at her grave.
Now, Marie Laveau has a life that's really surrounded by mystery. And by the mid-1820s, Marie is reported to have entered into a placage arrangement with a Christophe Glapion. Have you ever heard of that?
No, it's interesting.
Okay, so the placage arrangement was because of couples of mixed race and African Americans. It was illegal for them to marry someone white. And so the women were not legally recognized as wives, okay? They were known as placies. So a man could have actually had a wife,
right,
and then had a placage. So it's sort of like having an affair, but it's a system that people know about. Yeah, in Louisiana at that time, it's a very common arrangement. And the arrangement is with a guy called Christophe Glapion.
That's a popular name here in the city.
Okay, so Laveau, she lived with him until he died actually in 1885. Okay. So this was her mate for a number of years. Now, we have to look and say, is there some connection between your family and the last names of Laveau and Glapion? And we found a connection with Glapion by the way of your great-grandmother, Naomi, and her husband, Ferdinand Bigard.
Okay.
Now, Ferdinand Jr. was married to a woman named Lydia Glapion, okay? So it's the same last name as Marie Laveau's husband, Christophe Glapion. But there was no direct link between this Glapion family, who we believe is Lydia's, and Marie Laveau's husband, Christophe Glapion. We never could connect the two Glapion families back together, and so without those connections, I can't say to you as a genealogist that they're definitely related.
Right.
So, Brian, we have one more famous New Orleans citizen to go, and that's the famous jazz musician, Barney Bigard.
Yes.
He was actually born Albany, like Albany, New York. So Albany Leon Bigard.
Okay.
Okay. Born and raised here in New Orleans. He was known as a clarinetist, and he played with Louis Armstrong, but there's also Jelly Roll Morton and Duke Ellington. And his connection to Duke Ellington is that he even co-composed Ellington's classic hit, Mood Indigo.
Wow. That's awesome.
Let's try to explore if you have a connection to him. 1910, it's the year that your grandfather, Joseph Bigard, was born, August 27th.
Okay.
And that's only 4 months after Barney Bigard was born. And then we uncover this document. Your grandfather, Joseph Bigard's marriage record, which shows Joseph Bigard's father to be Alex J. Bigard, your great-grandfather.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Great,
okay.
Great.
So we look at the 1910 census for New Orleans Parish. You see the name Bigard and Emile. So there we have Albany Leon Barney Bigard. He's the grandson at age 4.
Okay.
And Albany's father is living there. And his father is Alexander J. as widowed. So this matches the information we've seen on your grandfather, Joseph Bigard's marriage records, right?
Great.
So Alex J. Bigard, your great-grandfather, who's also the father of Barney Bigard.
Wow.
So for you, we took it a step further. You did DNA for us.
Yes.
And the DNA confirms that you share DNA with Barney Bigard's known descendants. Wow. That indicates that you are the great-nephew of Barney Bigard.
Wow, that's awesome. Great-nephew.
Yeah. You're related to a great jazz legend.
Yeah,
yes, jazz legend of New Orleans.
I'm very excited about that.
Okay.
Very excited about that.
Thank you so much for coming to Genealogy Roadshow.
Thank you, appreciate it. Oh, wow, to be related to the music legend, Barney Bigard, is really, really awesome. So from now on, when I'm performing gospel music, it's good to know that I come from an excellent, legendary performer like Barney Bigard.
Now let's take a moment to step outside and share some very important news with this lifelong local. She's come to the Roadshow hoping for answers to a family mystery left unsolved for over a century.
Angel, tell me, what brings you to Genealogy Roadshow?
Well, I have a great-grandfather who had almost no past at all. My great-grandfather, Marcel Roque, his mother died not long after he was born, and he had no memory of her. His father remarried, and there was a new wife, whom he referred to as new mother. And he'd say, well, all I know is when my father died, new mother took me to school and said, when school was over, I will come back for you. But he never saw her again. Marcel had been put in an orphanage. I don't know what orphanage he was in or anything. And he had this vague memory that he might have a sister named Alice. He'd stare off into space, you know, and he'd just get lost in this moment. And I'd watch him, and he was so intent, and I'd say, penny for your thoughts, Grandpa, because that was a phrase he used with me. And he'd say, well, I think her name was Alice. And I'd say, well, whose name was Alice? And he'd say, I think she was my sister. But I really hope Alice was real, because he loved her his entire life, whether or not she was real. I was with him when he died. I spent his last moments with him. And I was holding his hand, and I saw him slip away. And it was a very profound moment for a little kid, because I thought, he just went out of my hands. I hoped he went into hers.
Right.
And so the search for Alice never ended, and I've never had any luck.
Well, this is obviously an incredible story. The first piece of it that we want to address is new mother. So we delved into that research, and we were able to find her name. Marie Toubois. Now, we found her name on a marriage license, and she was marrying her next husband. And on the certificate, it says that she was the widow of Albert Larocque, Marcel's father.
And that's how you found her?
We were not able to determine the name of a boys' home or the orphanage that Marcel, your great-grandfather, would have been in. But the next thing we looked at was the records of Marcel's parents, and we found a couple of documents that I would love to share with you.
Okay.
This is the death record of Albert Larocque, your great-great-grandfather, from 1895. And he was young. He was only in his early 30s when he died.
32 years old.
Exactly.
And he died in July of 1895?
Correct.
So Marcel would have been 8 or 9 or 10 years old, right around there.
Just a boy.
So yeah, a little boy.
So that's not the only document we were able to find, Angel. This is your great-great-grandmother,
Oh my
Catherine.
God. This is Catherine's?
From 1890. Now remember, she died 5 years before, so Marcel was even younger when she died. Explain exactly what you were telling us, that he didn't have a memory of his mother.
Right.
Now, let's talk about the circumstances of her death. It appears that Catherine, your great-great-grandmother, passed away from acute lobar pneumonia in 1890. The next document we were able to find may shed some light on your family mystery.
Okay.
Now, you had asked us if there were any other children. A few months earlier, we were able to find the death record of an infant Larocque.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Now, this baby, unfortunately, passes away just a few months before
she does.
She dies.
Is it a girl baby?
It's a girl baby.
Does she have a name?
On this record, she doesn't have a name, but it is entirely possible that that could have been Alice.
He spent his whole life wondering she was out there.
Right. Marcel would have been 3 or 4 years old by the time this baby was born, because just a few months following this, his mother, Catherine, also passes away.
That's why his memories were so cloudy. He would sit in that same chair and he would be so far away and he would be studying that memory that he just churned over, like trying to struggle to put the pieces of a mystery that was 80 years into a fog behind him.
Exactly.
You know?
Today, you know, we were able to shed some light on new mother, which I know that you had.
She has a name.
A lot of questions about, and also to fill in some of the details surrounding your great-great-grandparents' death.
What I was searching for was the truth, and that's what I got.
Well, thank you. This is a special story.
You'll never know what this means to me. You'll never know.
The questions keep coming for our genealogists.
I believe this to be my great-great-grandma, Emma Simpson. Maybe they can help me find out where she came from.
And for Air Force veteran Jolene Garcia, her questions about the importance of her great-uncle's military service are answered.
So this has a deeper personal connection to you.
It really does. He's the other veteran that I knew when he was alive.
So one of the tidbits that we found tells us your great-uncle was deployed with the 1st Infantry Division in Normandy.
Yeah, that's huge. I can't believe you verified that. I can't believe that.
Now let's meet a Louisiana local who's looking to discover the truth about her great-grandfather's fascinating journey that brought him to America.
My name is Rebecca Bustamante. I'm 28 years old. I live in downtown New Orleans in the French Quarter. My mom was a single mom, and so my grandparents had a huge part in raising me. I heard a lot of stories growing up about my great-grandfather. His story goes back to the days when he was raised and born in Honduras. He was brought up and lived on a banana plantation. He would be walking through the jungle. He had monkeys as pets. One day, he was returning back home to the plantation. Everyone was gone, and he couldn't figure out why. He stumbled upon his parents. They told him he had to go with this family to America, that he had no choice. That story is kind of the only piece of the puzzle that we kind of have as far as who my family is. To be able to validate that story and to be able to share it with other generations from here, it's kind of like the starting point of actually having some facts, opposed to the many years and generations that have gone by that just let it be some sort of, myth.
Rebecca, welcome to Genealogy Roadshow.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you here in the amazing city of New Orleans. And who has joined you today?
I have my mom, Cheryl, my stepdad, Greg, and my boyfriend, James.
Wonderful to meet you all.
You too.
You came to us with a question about your great-grandfather.
Yes.
Right, Theodore Graham.
Yes.
So that's your grandfather, correct?
Yes.
Right. What do you know about him?
Not much, actually. He supposedly was born in Honduras, and he came to America. That's about it.
Now, I'm actually going to do something a bit unique on the show, and that is we're going to start with the end.
Okay.
So the ending actually takes us to the 1920 census. This is your great-grandfather and your grandfather, Theodore Graham, and it notes that he is an adopted son of a man named John Ripplinger.
Okay.
I know you had mentioned that your great-grandfather grew up on a banana plantation.
Yes.
If you look at the man who is his adopted father, John Ripplinger, he mentions that he employs people in the banana planting industry.
Right.
And it's actually through this adopted father that we're gonna reveal a very interesting story about the life of your great-grandfather, Theodore Graham.
Okay.
Let's look at a picture of this John Ripplinger, the man who adopted your great-grandfather. John Ripplinger is actually a fascinating character. He's born in Minnesota, and in 1890, he moved to Seattle, Washington. Now, we know that based upon some of the city directories and other collections as we look to track his life. Now, we also know from several newspaper accounts that he worked for the King County Auditor, Seattle, Washington. And he actually ran for city comptroller as a Republican and served 2 terms. And then in February of 1906, Ripplinger announced that he would run for mayor of Seattle. He lost by 15 votes. And the interesting thing is, had he won that election, you might not be here today.
Right.
Because it was his life that set a course of different events that allowed him to eventually adopt your great-grandfather, Theodore Graham. So it's amazing, little things like that that change your lives today, that 15 people had that much of an impact. Now, looking through other documents, we tried to look, what's the connection between Honduras and John Ripplinger? We have here a 1914 certificate of registration of an American citizen. This would have been someone who's moving back and forth. He's registered with the consulate here. They're certifying that John Ripplinger is born age 64 in Minnesota, so that verifies that this is the man we're after. And it notes that he left the United States March 21st, 1906, and arrived in Honduras on April 25th, 1906. And interesting enough, he finished his role as comptroller on March 19th. And so literally 2 days later, he heads for Honduras. Now, why Honduras? The term Banana Republic, we know it now as something very different.
Yes.
Back then, what it meant was an unstable government that relied upon a single export for their economy. And in this case, we know that the banana plantations were very active. And British and American businessmen would actually go to Honduras and begin to cultivate land and build a business. That's what brought John to Honduras in the first place. Meanwhile, back in Seattle, and this is where the story gets really, really interesting. In May 1907, so about a year after the election, Seattle City Auditor discovers that there's something wrong in the books. The city is missing more than $68,000. Guess who they think stole the money?
Obviously.
Mr. Ripplinger.
Mr. Ripplinger. Have you ever heard of the Pinkerton Detective Agency?
Yes.
So at one time, they were the largest private law enforcement agency in the world. And it was the Pinkerton Detective Agency that the city of Seattle headed to try and find John Ripplinger. Now, the Pinkertons sent agents out because they had heard that John was sort of sitting somewhere in Honduras. And so here we have a report from one of their agents to New York, dated Thursday, October 10th, 1907. I have located the man in Honduras under the assumed name of J.R. Rich.
All right.
So John Ripplinger is in Honduras. He returns on his own accord to Seattle in July of 1909 in an effort to clear his own name. He gets back to Seattle. Well, what do you think they do?
We'd assume arrest him, interrogate him.
They indict him, 9 counts of embezzlement. Now, the case is sent to the jury. Any guesses on the verdict?
Not guilty.
You think not guilty?
Guilty.
Guilty? Not guilty.
You were right.
We learned from this newspaper, and this is October 10th of 1910, charges are dropped, and Ripplinger returns to Honduras. And he stays there until 1915, when his family and your great-grandfather, Theodore Graham, come back to the United States. Now, when anyone enters the U.S. at this period, there are passenger lists. And these passenger lists will document their arrival into a specific port. So this is November 15th of 1915. It's coming from Honduras into New Orleans. So this is part of the Ripplingers' arrival into this great city of New Orleans. Here we have Mrs. A.L. Ripplinger. That's his wife, Ada. And also on the passenger lists, we come across an 8-year-old Master Theodore Graham. That's a name you recognize. This says that he's a student, he is of Honduran nationality, and it also tells us that his nearest relative or friend is Mr. John Ripplinger. So here we have the link between this politician, swindler, businessman, opportunist, and your great-grandfather, Theodore Graham. And even handwritten on top of it is Guardian. Now, there's one more incredible piece of information on this document. Attached to the passenger list is a note. Now, the note is actually written by a Gertrude Graham, who says that she is the mother of Theodore Graham, and she's giving him over to John Ripplinger.
All right, then.
Now, it's written in Spanish, but translated, it says, I have handed my son, Theodore Graham, over to Mrs. John Ripplinger so that he will be in her care, treating him as if he were her own child. Now, why would Gertrude Graham give her son, Theodore, your great-grandfather, to the Ripplingers? The one interesting thing is we know that Theodore and his mother could read and write, which tells us even at age 8, he's had some education. There's some privilege there in his life. It's very likely Theodore's biological father had something to do with business. Now, is Theodore the son of John Ripplinger's business partner? We don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. Right now, it's an open case.
Right.
It's things like this that you never know what you're going to find in the documents. I mean, this is all about your great-grandfather. And this is the one clue we have to his parentage. So the hunt always continues.
Yes.
I mean, thank you so much for stopping by today.
Thank you.
I will tell you, it was a fun mystery. Thanks for letting me share it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Being connected to America's history is extremely important for this newlywed who's hoping she can pass down stories to her future children.
My name is Mary McCullough, and I'm a lifelong New Orleanian and also a newlywed. I just got married to Lee McCullough this summer. My mom's side of the family have been in New Orleans since the very early 1800s. My dad passed away when I was a teenager, so his side of the family is much more of a mystery to me. I would love to find out what my background is. I suspect that I would be of all different kinds of nationalities. I'm interested in finding out what, if any, involvement my family had in the Civil War, slavery. You know, I think of my family tree and all of these men and women that met And from them, generations of people were born. And so as I've just gotten married, I would love to be able to bring into that my history as a gift to those future generations.
Welcome to Genealogy Roadshow.
Thank you.
So who do you have here with you today?
I have my new husband, Lee.
Oh, very nice to meet you.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Now, we did do some research. I looked through a number of documents. So let's start with your father's side, okay?
Awesome.
You thought your father, Donald, was from Mississippi?
My dad died when I was a teenager.
Okay.
And I understood that he was born in Mississippi, but I don't know if that's accurate information or not.
Well, what we do know is that Donald's parents were Joseph and Elvira, your grandparents.
Yes.
And they were married in 1924. And 4 years prior to the wedding, Joseph was listed as living in Mississippi, actually, on the 1920 census. Now, Joseph, your grandfather, moved to New Orleans between 1920 and 1924. Your grandparents were married, and then 10 years later, they had
your father, Donald. So Donald was not born in Mississippi, but in New Orleans instead.
Now, let's take a look at the 1940 census here. Elvira, your grandmother, is living with her children.
Yes.
Okay, so that's Donald, Ronald, and Theone. But in this household, Joseph is not listed. Now, when we took a look at the 1940 city directory, so we find Joseph living in a household with a woman named Irene, who's a maid, and he's a chauffeur. So in 1940, your grandparents definitely not living in the same household, okay? Now, moving backwards in time with your grandmother, Elvira, so we're going to take a look at a 1920 census, and we can see here that Elvira is listed as a cigar maker for her brother. She worked as a cigar maker for much of her life.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yes. She's 15 at this time. So even in 1920, at that tender young age, she's a cigar maker. Now, when tracing Elvira, your grandmother's line, back, we looked at Raymond Trevine, Elvira's grandfather, who is your second great-grandfather, okay? In the 1850 census records. And do you see next to Raymond Trevine the letter M?
Yes.
Do you know what that stands for?
Mulatto.
Mulatto, yeah, that's correct.
So we know that your paternal grandmother comes from African-American descent.
Now, following Raymond Trevine, your second great-grandfather, forward, by 1860, he is married and living in a household with 3 small children. And their 6-month-old little girl is Laura, your great-grandmother.
Okay.
You know, it's 1860, Civil War is starting up. And 3 years later, we have what's known as a company muster roll. So if you see Raymond Trevine, your second great-grandfather, was enrolled in the colored infantry for Louisiana in the Civil War. Now, had you ever heard of the Trevine surname or anything like that?
Never heard of that.
Okay. There's a really cool monument in Washington, D.C., and it's called the African American Civil War Monument.
Yes.
We see that Raymond Trevine is on this monument.
Wow.
That's great.
You know, I never did know a lot about my dad's side of the family, and then to find out that his name is immortalized on a monument in Washington, D.C. is so exciting because that's my family.
Right, yeah, that's your family. You can go there and you can share that story with your mom and your son and everyone in your family, you know?
That's great.
This is honestly information that I don't think that I could have uncovered alone.
I'm excited to hear it.
Now, switching to your mother's side of the family.
One of the other things that was mentioned is that you had an ancestor from Spain.
I think his last name is Ripoll.
We actually did find a record for a Joseph Ripoll, your third great-grandfather. Or, as he's listed here,
Jose.
From Spain.
From Spain, yeah. It shows that his date of arrival was in 1820. Now we know he was naturalized in 1838. So let's track him forward. I looked at the 1850 census. We have Joseph Ripoll, and he's living with Marie Lebeau, your third great-grandmother. And we know that Marie Lebeau and her kids are all listed as mulatto.
So this means you have African-American descent on your mother's side as well. Since we are in the 1850 census, slavery is still legal in Louisiana. We know from this that she is a free person of color because she is listed in this census. Because before 1870, a slave was seen as property and would not have been enumerated as a person on census records. So you see your third great-grandparents, yes. Joseph Ripoll, and then Marie Lebeau. But if you look right above, there is a widow, Jean-Pierre Lebeau, who's listed as Black. Okay. So looking at this family unit, this might be Joseph Ripoll, your third great-grandfather, and then Marie Lebeau, your third great-grandmother, living next door to her mother, widow Jean-Pierre Lebeau. Now, we've already identified the widow Lebeau as your fourth great-grandmother, who's identified as Black, as we just saw on the 1850 census. So I want you guys to take a look at this document called a slave schedule, okay? Now, a slave schedule is a list of slave owners and the number of slaves working for them. Looking at that, you can see that the widow Lebeau owned 6 slaves. And then we have here Joseph Ripoll, also living next door and owning 6 slaves. In doing African-American research, especially slave genealogy, one of the things most people do not know is that free people of color also owned slaves. It wasn't very common, but Blacks who owned slaves usually did so for benevolent or financial reasons. They granted them their freedom for a nominal sum or bought and sold them to elevate their social status. And it's one of those pieces of history that we really don't talk about that much. So here we show a piece of history where Jose was Spanish, right? But in his household, he had a free person of color, yet he had 6 slaves, and his mother-in-law had the same. You have your second great-grandfather, Raymond Trevane, who fought in the Civil War for the U.S. colored troops. At the same time, you have your fourth great-grandmother owning slaves and your third great-grandfather owning slaves.
And they were all in the same area.
All in the same area. So your family was on both sides of the war. For me as a researcher, it was extremely interesting to come across that complex society and community within New Orleans. I thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share this with you and to discover your family history.
It's great.
It's been a blast.
Finding out that I had family members that fought on the side of the Union and then family members that also were owners of slaves was so interesting and just shows how deep family history, genealogy, and American history truly is.